3 full-blown ayahuasca ceremonies over the course of 5 nights, back to back, deep in the jungles of Costa Rica. 18 hours total, spent sitting on a padded mat in pitch black, digging for things in my head I wasn't entirely sure I even wanted to find. Before I left, I thought I knew what I was looking for. But the medicine doesn't care about what you want, it gives you what you need. And when that happens, you have no choice but to deal with it head on. The facility is called Soltara. It sits about an hour and a half from the San Jose airport. And the second you step into the compound, you realize this is the furthest thing from a tourist trap. Your eyes go straight to a massive circular thatched hut, a structure called a malacca. That's the place you'll open the door to everything you don't want anyone else to know. It's where the ceremonies take place. Ayahuasca is also referred to as the medicine. But before you even touch it, you need to be clean. There's a strict diet, and it's designed to strip every single toxic substance from your system. It works. You generally feel incredible. But regardless of what your diet was before you got there, you will follow the diet from this point forward. And in order to enforce that rule, they take your contraband shortly after you arrive. Contraband meaning any outside food you brought with you. And that's exactly how my 2 bags of Tootsie Pops ended up sequestered in a brown paper bag with my name written on it and a black Sharpie for 5 incredibly lonely days. It was like I was in Soviet Russia, but you have to trust the process. The real transition begins on the morning of day 2. 8 of us as we sat in a circle in the middle of the malacca, total strangers. We were handed a physical piece of an ayahuasca vine, and one by one, whoever held the vine also held the floor. Nothing was off limits, from why we traveled thousands of miles to be here, to what we brought with us, to what we were begging to leave behind in the jungle. Trauma, pain, addiction, loss, abuse. The stories were heart-wrenching. The resilience in that room was inexplicable. People who had endured things that would have broken me, yet they still managed to get up every morning and function in society. And you would never know it by looking at them. It was all whitewashed so the rest of the world wouldn't judge, condemn, ostracized. Sitting in that circle, listening to them pour their hearts out, there was no armor left. Everyone was emotionally naked. And to prove the extent to which each of us needed something from this place, every one of us had spent $10,000, sat for hours on an airplane, rode a shuttle over pothole-filled roads into the jungle, just to throw our skeletons onto the floor of that malacca. And we did all of that, knowing there were no guarantees. All we had was hope. Now, not everyone showed up with trauma. There were a couple of guys like me, great life, no major demons, just looking for what else is out there. Just searching for what really happens when that curtain of life finally closes. Because we knew there had to be more in the end than the standard story we'd been fed our entire lives. But while you can request things from the medicine, never make the mistake of thinking you're in charge of anything. Ever. Then came the first ceremony night. You sit around the perimeter of the malacca. Each person has their own padded mat, a pillow, a blanket, and a bucket. For most people, the bucket became the most important piece of equipment in the room. It's what they call purging, ridding your body of all the toxins it no longer needs. Now, fortunately, I never got nauseous, but the sound in that room is something you'll never forget. When the ceremony begins, you're called up one by one to sit before the maestro, and that's 2 Peruvian women trained to heal people from the time they were teenagers. They pour the medicine into a heavy shot glass. You hold it to your chest and you thank it in advance. You drink, you bow, you return to your mat. Then the lights go out and it becomes dark. I mean, completely pitch black. Watches aren't allowed. You lose all sense of time. And then from one second to the next, you start to feel different. And right as the medicine hits you full force, one of the maestros begins to sing the Icaros healing song. She moves systematically around the dark room, blowing cigar smoke to clear the negative energy before singing directly to each person. And they're individualized songs, and they're based upon what that person needs. Then the second maestro joins in from the opposite side of the malacca, harmonizing in stereo. And even though their songs are different, they sound like they were written as one. And somehow, in the middle of all of it, you realize you're high as fuck. You know exactly who you are, where you are, why you're here, but the content of your consciousness no longer is yours to choose. Your thoughts are entirely dictated by the medicine for 6 straight hours. Now, I'm not here to tell you everything I saw, and you wouldn't believe me even if I did, but I'll do my best to give you an idea of what the experience was like. Night 1 was orientation. And on that night, the medicine didn't give me revelations. It just showed me the layout of the room and the tools I had at my disposal. And what I mean by that is it was as if an empty room addition had been built onto my mind, just waiting for the furniture to arrive on the next night. It was a training ground where I learned to keep my focus steady while the medicine tried to yank me in 10 different directions all at once. I learned how to stop a vision, keep it focused, study and understand its meaning, and then release it so I could be shown what was next. And I felt like after 6 hours of practice, I got to be pretty damn good at it. On night 2, I took too much medicine, mainly because the word moderation isn't in my vocabulary. And while more usually sounds better, if you take too much, things move too fast to comprehend. You can't stop the visions long enough to study them. Your mind becomes this tornado of thoughts and emotions, and as hard as you try, you can't seem to grab hold of anything for long enough to make sense of it. But in all of that chaos, my wife, KJ, she showed up. She climbed onto my back and I gave her a piggyback ride through a celestial plane of light shows, vivid images, and geometric patterns. We had the best time together. This wasn't our physical reality. This was a higher plane of existence where the baggage and past trauma of divorce and betrayal, they simply didn't exist. We were completely free of doubt, free of self-consciousness, free from the shame that comes from just being human. And even in that state of absolute freedom, we chose to be together. There was nowhere else either of us wanted to be. And that feeling of love and loyalty alone was worth every single sacrifice it took to get me there. What you have to understand is what the medicine reveals is not a suggestion or a guess. It's the absolute truth, shown to you without a single alternative explanation. And on night 3, I call that the Goldilocks night. Night 1 was too cold. Night 2 was too hot. But night 3, it was just right. It was stable, clear, deep. The medicine went looking for unfinished business, shining a light into every single crevice to ensure there was no stone left unturned. Suddenly it was 1990. I was physically standing in the desert of Kuwait, waiting for the ground war to start during Operation Desert Storm. I wasn't remembering it, I was there. I felt the anxiety as I watched the Egyptian tanks roll across the berm. Then I heard a voice, a distinct thought that wasn't mine. It said, "You know nothing that happens from this point forward is your fault, right?" And I answered, "Thank you for checking up on me, but I do know that. We're on the same page." Instantly, a massive yellow thumbs up emoji flashed in my mind's eye, and the vision vanished. And I realized the medicine was scanning for open wounds and festering trauma. And if it didn't find any, it quickly moved on. At some point during that same night, I felt this overwhelming instinctual need to act. I was told, and when I say told, it wasn't audible, it was just an understanding. The 3 women in the group needed protection. So from my mat in the darkness, I projected a shroud of strength over them. Not a spell, not a ritual, just raw, focused intention, safely projected into the space where they lay. The next day, when I told the story, one of the women said she felt it. And as I've said, the medicine is the truth. I didn't wonder if it worked, I knew it did. And finally, I got the answer to the question I had traveled there to ask. What happens when the final curtain closes? Where do I fit into all of this, into life in general? I was shown a universe. It was vast, complete, alive. And that universe was me, not a metaphor. I was the creator at the very top, where you'd expect to see a plaque on a desk with the inscription, "The buck stops here." It was me. And cascading down like a chain of light particles were iterations of myself, each one slightly smaller, each one managing the layer below it, all the way down to the physical Sam lying on a mat in the jungle. I was what you'd refer to as God. All this was mine. I just wasn't capable of realizing it until that moment. And KJ was there too. She was watching over my physical form while I was overseeing the architecture of the cosmos. She was her own entity, operating freely of her own volition. She wasn't mine to have made. She had chosen to be there, to protect me. I was shown that other beings can exist within your universe, but it's still your universe. Now, I know this goes against religion. I know people out there will have a problem with it, but it wasn't my job to interpret. It was a gift of absolute clarity. So we're just gonna have to agree to disagree, because I'm as sure of what I saw as anything else I've ever known. The next morning, I lay there in my room, in the dark, content. No old wounds had been left open. I had come looking for answers, and I was shown that the thing I was looking for was the exact thing doing the looking. I texted KJ about my experience, and she made a great point. She said the work I had done with a shaman in California, using MDMA for 7 solid hours just 8 months prior, had probably already addressed my deep trauma. And she was right. The experience had prepared me for this. I had already done the heavy lifting. There were also 2 very odd healing incidents. The first, I had separated my bicep from my shoulder, and it hurt every day for a year or so. And up until that point, my shoulder hurting had become my new normal. The second one was I had knee surgery maybe 8 weeks prior, my meniscus. It was still healing. I mean, I could walk on it without my brace, but it certainly wasn't back to 100%. And by the time I left that place, I no longer had pain in either my shoulder or my knee. And I still don't to this day. In the end, what I saw changed how I understand my own role in life. Not in some cheesy bumper sticker kind of way. The medicine literally showed me a model of consciousness and creation. And I came back different. The kind of different that actually matters. And it's still not finished. You know the neuralizer from the Men in Black movie? That pen that flashes and wipes your memory? I had that exact experience on night 3. I'd see a vision, I'd analyze it, deal with it, understand it, but then, click, the pen erased my memory. I had no idea what I had just spent what felt like 30 minutes going over in great detail. But for some reason, I felt like the device's battery was glitching. Even now, I still get these sudden, vivid glimpses of things I was supposed to have forgotten. Entire conversations about the nature of reality are still unlocking in my head. And I feel like of the things I saw, what I actually remember, I've only scratched the surface. Was it worth it? Abso-fucking-lutely. But you can't truly understand it unless you had been in that jungle, listening to Mother Ayahuasca with your own ears, to the point where you're no longer living in the Matrix. Namaste.